Hey guys, in this video we're going to be talking about how to solve by factoring. So in this module we're mostly talking about quadratics, so it's only fair to know that every function has an equation, and the quadratic function, which looks like this, a normal quadratic in the x and y plane. So let me draw my x, my y. Okay. So this is what a normal quadratic looks like. And a quadratic can have a function that can be written either in standard form, so standard, which you've probably seen the most. So that's ax squared plus bx plus c, which equals f of x. And then there's the vertex form. And this form, vertex form, that tells us exactly where the vertex is without having to solve anything. And this is just f of x equals a, which is a multiplication factor, times x minus h squared plus k. So let's look at this in an example. So let's say I had the equation f of x equals 4 times x plus 2 squared plus 5. Now, the vertex is h comma k. So our h and our k. So for this function over here, my vertex would be at -2, and it's negative because we have a negative here in our equation, like our format, and this is positive, so that means we should have a -2 for our x value for the vertex, and our y value will be 5. So -2, 5, which is somewhere around here. So let's draw another one. So -2, 5 is somewhere around here, and the graph would be going upwards. Well, that's not perfect, but I think you get the idea. Okay, much better. So the vertex is either going to be a minimum or a maximum. That's important to remember. Okay. Another thing you should know is that typically a quadratic equation has two solutions. So when we look at our xy graph or plane here, usually you're given a function that asks you to solve for a solution, or maybe you have multiple. In a quadratic, you're usually going to have two. And the solutions are going to be your x-intercepts. So right here and right here. So your solutions can also be called roots. They can be called zeros, or they can be called your x-intercept or y-intercept based on what you're asked for. Okay, so let's say you have an equation in standard form. So let's say we have f of x equals x squared plus 9x plus 20. So to solve, we would set this equation to 0. Plus 9x plus 20 equals 0. And then we would factor. And before we factor, one important thing to notice is that this number, 20, is going to be our y-intercept. The c value is your y-intercept. So let me go ahead and write that to the side. Okay, so now when we factor this, x plus 5 times x plus 4, which equals 0. And then we can solve for our vertex by setting each of these to 0. So x plus 5 equals 0, and then x plus 4 equals 0. So in this case, x would equal -5. Here it would be x equals -4. So our vertex for this function over here would be -5 and -4. And if you want this in like point form, you would just add your parentheses, comma 0, parentheses, parentheses, comma 0, parentheses. There we go. Now, let's say you want to find the vertex. To find the vertex using this format, all you're going to do is take your two solutions and find the average of those two. So -5 plus -4 divided by 2 would give us the value in the middle, which is so -5 plus -4 divided by 2, that gives us -4.5. So we have our x value for our vertex, which is over here. So we want our y value. To get our y value, all we're going to do is substitute -4.5 into our x value, into the standard equation. Once we plug in -4.5, so -4.5 squared plus 9 times -4.5 plus 20, we're going to get that our y value equals -0.25. So this value right here, our absolute minimum, or our vertex, is -4.5, comma, -0.25. Okay. Now, let's say we have an equation like this. Squared plus n minus 42 equals 0. So now I'll go through all the factoring steps in this part. So remember that a times c equals 0, and then, a times c equals 1 times 42. So 1 times 42. And then our b value equals 1. So then we set up our numbers or table. So we have this, two numbers that equal 42, and the same two numbers that add up to give you 1. That's going to be, this is -42. Sorry about that. So this is going to be negative, and we should have 7 here and -6. 7. Okay, so now we can make our parentheses. So let me choose a different color. Okay, so x, or in this case it would be n plus 7 times n minus 6. Then we're going to set this equal to 0 to find our roots or solutions to this equation over here. And we would get n plus 7 equals 0, and then n minus 6 equals 0. So in this case, subtract 7 on both sides, and we get n equals -7, and here n equals +6. So these are our two solutions. Okay, let's look at another example. Again, I'm going to go through the steps. -r minus 42 equals 0. So now we're going to have two numbers that give us a times c. So our a value is 1, c value is negative 42, so this is negative 42. And then two numbers that give us, when you add them together, two numbers, you add them together, they give you your b value, which is negative 1. So the two numbers would be negative 7 and positive 6. Note that for the previous problem, the numbers were 7 and negative 6, and that's because of this negative and this positive over here. So make sure you're being consistent with your signs. And now we're going to make our parentheses. So r minus 7, and then r plus 6. Set this equal to 0. R minus 7 equals 0, and then r plus 6 equals 0. So now all you're going to do is add 7 on both sides. So r equals 7 for this one, and then for this one it would be r equals negative 6 because you're subtracting 6 on both sides.